Sarah, there's a burglary happening.
John, my father, shouted in a panic, not realizing that David and Jessica were in the middle of an intimate moment in the basement. He had mistaken their passionate encounter for a break-in and locked the two of them in the room. As John frantically reached for the phone to call the police, I quickly intervened and revealed the shocking truth to him. Upon learning the reality of the situation, John's body trembled with rage, and he decided to summon Michael and the entire family to the basement. I couldn't forgive those two for betraying me. I was determined to make them experience hell. Driven by years of pent-up resentment, I was ready to unleash my wrath upon the unsuspecting couple. My name is Sarah, and I'm a 29-year-old who just got engaged last month. My fiancé, David, was my high school classmate. Although we didn't interact much during our student days, we reconnected after starting our careers. David had joined the workforce before I graduated from college, and he became my mentor at the company, guiding me through my new role.
I never thought you'd end up working at our company, Sarah. You were a top student with a knack for science, so I assumed you'd pursue a career in that field. I had no idea you were interested in publishing,
he said. David was incredibly attentive and dedicated to his work. He patiently taught me the ropes and always had my back whenever I made mistakes. Despite being the same age, he felt like a reliable senior colleague, and I couldn't help but admire his dependability. David, you've really changed. Back in high school, you were more timid and unreliable. But now, you're completely different. You're so dependable that it's hard to believe we're the same age, I remarked. When I first joined the company, I addressed David by his last name. He did the same with me, and no one could have imagined that we would become so close.
Hey, calling me timid is a bit harsh. But I guess I was more introverted back in high school, so I can't blame you for thinking that,
he admitted. Everything changed during the welcome and farewell party for new employees. By chance, David and I ended up sitting next to each other, and he struck up a conversation with me. We bonded over nostalgic memories of our student days and discovered that we shared similar interests. Before we knew it, we started hanging out for drinks after work, and soon enough, we were on a first-name basis. As we spent more time together outside of work, I learned that David had an even greater love for books than I had imagined, and that he once aspired to be a novelist. Remember how I used to sit at my desk and write during breaks in high school? I was working on a novel to submit to publishing companies, he revealed. His words triggered a memory of David being honored at a school assembly. The quiet young man who sat at the edge of the classroom had achieved such an incredible feat. It was impossible not to be drawn to him. I was honored at that assembly because my novel had won the grand prize, he explained. I had never been particularly interested in novels. However, the thought of that shy young man pouring his heart and soul into a piece of writing piqued my curiosity. I wanted to see the work he had dedicated so much time and effort to create. And so, driven by mere curiosity, I decided to read his novel. As I delved into the pages, my perspective was completely transformed. The captivating storyline and the masterful craftsmanship left me utterly spellbound. From that moment on, my perception of him completely changed. I abandoned my plans to pursue a career in science and set my sights on working for a publishing company instead. My twin sister, Jessica, who had been following in my footsteps to study science, relentlessly complained about my decision.
Why did you give up on that major tech company, Sarah? Didn't you say you were considering working there?
She questioned, her voice laced with disbelief and frustration. Unlike me, Jessica was a flashy and attention-seeking individual. She belonged to the popular clique in our class, and I often found myself serving as her plain and unremarkable sidekick.
When you compare Sarah to Jessica, Jessica looks like a total catch.
I overheard our classmates gossiping.
I know, right? She's got a great body, and her face is so stunning that it's hard to believe they're actually twins. Sarah's not bad, but Jessica is just too cute to even notice her.
Another chimed in, their words dripping with admiration for my sister and dismissal of my own appearance.
If I had to choose, I'd definitely go for Jessica. Sarah seems more like a good friend than a girlfriend, you know?
A third voice added, cementing my position as the inferior twin in their eyes. Day after day, I endured being compared to Jessica and treated with disdain. Even our parents favored Jessica for her good looks, and our mother, Emily, was particularly blatant in her preferential treatment. While I could only gain attention through my academic achievements, Jessica was showered with praise for the smallest of actions. A little help with household chores earned her glowing compliments, and a mere smile elicited gushing exclamations of how adorable. I found myself both envious and exasperated by the constant fawning over Jessica. The first time I truly recognized the stark contrast in our treatment was back in elementary school. Since Jessica and I shared the same birthday, we always celebrated together. Everyone would rush to congratulate Jessica, while my own birthday wishes always came as an afterthought. Emily was especially cruel in this regard.
Happy birthday, Jessica! Oh, and you too, Sarah. You should try harder in your studies,
she would say, her words devoid of any genuine warmth towards me. While Jessica basked in the exclusive attention and congratulations from Emily, I was left feeling neglected and yearning for my mother's approval. Determined to earn Emily's praise, I threw myself into my studies with a newfound fervor. Miraculously, I managed to achieve a perfect score on a test, a feat that filled me with pride and hope.
If I show this to Emily, surely she'll,
I thought to myself, my heart swelling with anticipation. That day marked our 10th birthday party, a celebration for both Jessica and me. I figured that if I showed Emily my test results before the party began, I might finally receive the congratulations I so desperately craved before Jessica could steal the spotlight once again. With my chest puffed up with excitement, I made my way to the kitchen, only to be greeted by a shocking scene that stopped me dead in my tracks.
Hey, Mom! Look at this! Jessica got a 90 on the test.
My sister's voice rang out, her tone dripping with pride as she waved her test paper in front of Emily's face. To my utter disbelief, Jessica had beaten me to the punch, presenting her own test results first. Normally, Jessica's grades hovered around or below average, so scoring a 90 was an impressive feat for her. There was no way Emily would pass up the opportunity to shower her with praise. And just like that, the congratulatory words I had longed to hear were bestowed upon Jessica instead, leaving me once again overlooked and overshadowed by my twins' achievements.
Jessica is such a hard worker. Maybe I should add an extra turkey to today's birthday party. Or is there a toy you'd like as a reward? We could go shopping for it on your next day off,
Emily gushed, her eyes sparkling with pride as she lavished praise upon my sister.
Emily, I worked hard on the test too. Look!
I stammered, frantically waving my perfect score in front of her face, desperate for a shred of recognition. But the moment Emily's gaze fell upon my test, the smile vanished from her face, replaced by a cold, stern expression that sent shivers down my spine.
Don't get carried away with something like that. Studying is the only thing you're good at, so it's only natural that you can achieve this much, right? What are you getting so excited about? You should consider a perfect score as the norm. Don't come reporting to me every single time,
she snapped, her words cutting through me like a knife. Shocked and at a loss for words, I stood there, my heart sinking into the depths of despair. At the same time, a burning hatred for Jessica began to consume me from within. We were supposed to be twins, yet Jessica was praised so easily while I was treated as if my accomplishments were nothing more than a given, met with cold, dismissive glances. Why was I the only one who had to endure this kind of treatment? Frustrated and resentful beyond words, I couldn't bring myself to celebrate my own birthday, instead retreating to my room and crying my eyes out. In those moments of darkness, my only support came from John, our father, who had become a doctor. John had established his own medical practice around the time I entered middle school and continues to work as a physician to this day.
Sarah, just focus on doing what you love at your own pace. You don't have to listen to what your dad or mom say about your life, you know?
He reassured me, his words a soothing balm to my wounded soul. In the comforting embrace of John's arms, I finally let go of all the pain and sorrow I had been holding back, sobbing uncontrollably as I poured my heart out to him. As long as I had John by my side, I decided that would be enough. I resolved to stop seeking love and approval from Emily, steeling my heart against any further disappointment. It was in that moment of clarity that John's voice interrupted my thoughts.
Sarah, take a look at this. There were dandelions blooming by the side of the road. Isn't that amazing?
He exclaimed, his eyes wide with childlike wonder. You see, John had a tendency to be quite out of touch with common sense. He would confidently point at a sunflower and call it a dandelion, or spot a coyote and shout about a squirrel sighting. He just had a way of being on a completely different wavelength from everyone else. But it was that very quirkiness that never failed to bring a smile to my face, even in my darkest moments. However, Jessica would always glare at us with envious eyes, unable to stand the sight of my happiness. She had a habit of coveting and taking away anything that belonged to me. Consumed by a fierce jealousy whenever I possessed something better than her. This ugly truth became glaringly apparent to me during my middle school years. At the time, I had started dating a boyfriend who was way out of my league in terms of his impressive qualities. He was academically brilliant and excelled in sports, the kind of guy I never thought would give me a second glance. When he confessed his feelings for me, I was so shocked that I thought I must be dreaming. I fell for you because of how diligently you studied, even during breaks. While everyone else was goofing around, you ignored them and kept working hard. I thought that was really cool. I didn't want to lose to someone like you, Sarah, so I've been studying like crazy to maintain my grades. He admitted, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment as he shared his admiration for me. His words filled my heart with a warm, fuzzy feeling, and I couldn't help but fall even deeper in love with him. Thanks to his influence, I finally learned to embrace and appreciate the studious side of myself. I vowed to cherish and treasure our relationship, determined to make it work. But just as I was basking in the glow of our newfound happiness, Jessica had to come along and ruin everything. I'm sorry. I kissed Jessica. My boyfriend confessed, his voice heavy with guilt and regret. His sudden confession left me speechless, my mind reeling as I struggled to process the words that had just left his lips. As I stood there, grasping for a coherent response, Jessica stepped in between us, shielding him from my inevitable wrath.
It's not his fault. I couldn't help but fall for him. I just couldn't let him go. So please, don't blame him. If you want to blame someone, blame me.
She pleaded, her voice laced with a sickening sweetness that made my stomach churn. No, Jessica, this is all on me. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I think we should break up. He interjected, his words twisting the knife that had already been plunged into my heart. The entire situation reeked of a poorly staged performance, a charade designed to mask their betrayal. Blinded by my own pain, I failed to notice the triumphant smirk that played across Jessica's lips as she reveled in my suffering. Unable to bear another moment in their presence, I turned on my heel and fled, my feet carrying me as far away from them as possible. For weeks afterward, I couldn't bring myself to set foot in school. The thought of seeing them together in the same classroom, of having to pretend that everything was fine, was more than I could bear. It wasn't until I had finally managed to regain some semblance of composure that I found the strength to return. As fate would have it, I overheard a conversation between Jessica and our classmates that shattered any remaining illusions I might have had. "Damn, Jessica's a real piece of work, stealing her sister's boyfriend like that. Who does that? That's just messed up," one of them remarked, his voice dripping with disgust.
But it pissed me off, you know? Like, how could Sarah, with her inferior looks, manage to snag such a high-quality boyfriend? It just didn't sit right with me,
Jessica retorted, her words laced with venom.
I mean, Jessica's way cuter and prettier. That's the only reason I took him. If he had noticed Jessica from the start, there's no way he would have fallen for Sarah.
Another classmate chimed in, her tone laced with a cruel amusement. "Dude, she's scary. I don't ever want to get on her bad side." A third voice added, a nervous chuckle punctuating his words. As I watched Jessica laughing crudely with the boys, a sense of utter despair washed over me. It was clear that she had never truly cared for him at all. Her actions had been driven by nothing more than pure jealousy, a spiteful desire to rob me of the happiness I had found. I tried to tell my ex-boyfriend the truth, to make him see the kind of person Jessica really was. But he refused to listen, instead choosing to confront Jessica with my accusations. From that moment on, until the day I graduated middle school, I found myself the target of Jessica's relentless bullying and harassment. I had hoped that graduation would finally grant me the freedom I so desperately craved. But just as I was beginning to allow myself to dream of a brighter future, a new wave of despair came crashing down upon me. Jessica, it seemed, had decided to enroll in the same high school as me. Despite her initial plans to attend a different school, she had somehow caught wind of my choice and, like a malevolent shadow, had followed me there. My ex-boyfriend, who had chosen to attend a different high school, had outlived his usefulness and been promptly discarded by Jessica. From that point on, I resigned myself to a life of mediocrity, going through the motions day after day with no real sense of purpose or drive. It wasn't until I witnessed David's unwavering dedication and passion that something began to stir within me once more. Thanks to his influence, I found the courage to pursue my dreams, and to my amazement, I was offered a position at the publishing company I had always aspired to work for. Emily was furious when she learned that I had changed my career path without her consent, but John's intervention saved me from being thrown out of the house altogether. As my savings grew and my relationship with David blossomed, I finally felt ready to break free from Jessica's toxic influence once and for all. With David by my side, I took the leap and started a new chapter in my life, moving out on my own and leaving the past behind me. And so, after 5 years of being together, David and I decided to get engaged. When I introduced him to my parents to seek their blessing, their response was even more enthusiastic than I had anticipated. Emily, in particular, took an immediate liking to David, and the two of them engaged in lively conversation, their laughter filling the house with a warmth that had been absent for far too long. As they chatted away merrily, Jessica sat in the corner, her eyes narrowed in jealousy as she watched the joyful scene unfold before her. From that day forward, David became a frequent visitor to our home. My parents grew to love him like a true son, and he was even invited to join our extended family gatherings for Christmas.
Why don't we invite David's parents and relatives too? My dad and mom love having a big, lively crowd around, so I'm sure they'd be thrilled.
John suggested, his eyes twinkling with excitement. My paternal grandmother, who had been running a restaurant, had recently announced that she would be closing down the business that winter. As a final hurrah, the entire family had planned to come together for one last celebration, a Christmas party that would double as a tribute to my grandparents and all they had accomplished. Initially, David's parents had been hesitant to join, not wanting to impose, but with a little encouragement from my grandparents, they eventually agreed to come along. With David's relatives also in attendance, that year's Christmas party was a grand affair, filled with more people than ever before. Do you think we have enough drinks? If we run out, I can always make a quick run to the store. Just make sure to tell David and the others not to hold back, okay? Emily fretted, her brow furrowed with concern.
It's all right, Emily. I heard some of David's relatives are bringing plenty of their own drinks, so there's no need to worry.
I reassured her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Having only ever had serious conversations with Emily about my studies, I found myself feeling nervous at the prospect of engaging in casual chatter with her. But as my relationship with David deepened, Emily began to take a more active interest in my life, and we found ourselves talking more and more. It was through these conversations that I discovered just how much of a worrier Emily truly was. Despite having meticulously planned every detail in advance, she would still find herself fretting and fussing on the day of the event, her nerves getting the better of her. Seeing this unexpected side of her helped to ease some of the tension I had always felt in her presence. On the day of the party, Emily was her usual restless self, bustling about as she made last-minute preparations. As I worked alongside her, she suddenly paused and smiled wistfully.
Come to think of it, you were always right there by my side, worrying about me.
She mused, her voice tinged with nostalgia.
What?
I asked, caught off guard by her sudden declaration. As I stood there, stunned by her words, Emily's expression shifted to one of bittersweet sadness as she began to recount tales from our past.
Even though I scolded you every day, you never let it get you down. You'd always come to me and ask, Mom, is there anything I can help with, while Jessica was off playing somewhere?
She reminisced, her eyes distant as she lost herself in the memories.
You spent more time by my side than you did playing. I realized then that I was making you worry about me. I knew I was being cold to you, Sarah. I knew I was doing a terrible thing.
She confessed, her voice heavy with regret. As Emily spoke, abruptly pouring her heart out to me while preparing the steaks, I listened in silence, absorbing every word.
At first, I was strict with Jessica. She was the older sister, but she was always taking things from you, wasn't she? Your birthday presents, your snacks, anything she could get her hands on. I couldn't let her keep doing that to you.
She explained, her eyes filling with a fierce protectiveness.
There was a time when I was really hard on her. But the harsher I was with Jessica, the worse she treated you.
She revealed, her voice trembling with emotion. Her words hit me like a bombshell. As I thought back, I remembered how, in the beginning, Emily would fix Jessica with a stern glare whenever she stole one of my toys. There were even a few times when she scolded her right in front of me. But then, at some point, it all stopped abruptly, and before I knew it, I had become the target of Emily's ire. Instead of trying to reason with the disobedient Jessica, Emily had chosen to restrain me, to keep me out of harm's way. She had taken advantage of my docile nature, she admitted, her voice heavy with pain and regret.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I've been a terrible mother, putting you through so much pain and suffering.
Emily whispered, her voice heavy with regret and sincerity. As I listened to her explanation and heard her apology for the first time, tears welled up in my eyes, threatening to spill over at any moment. Seeing my emotional state, Emily paused in her work and asked me to wait for a moment before disappearing into our grandmother's room. When she returned, she held something in her hands, presenting it to me with a tenderness that caught me off guard. As my gaze fell upon the item she held, the tears I had been holding back burst forth, streaming down my face as I struggled to comprehend the reality before me.
This is the first perfect score you ever got on a test, back when you were in elementary school. Do you remember? You went out of your way to show it to me on your birthday. I was so proud of you then, even if I didn't show it.
Emily revealed, her voice trembling with emotion.
You had never tried to seek praise or attention before, but that day, you took the initiative to express yourself. This test is a precious treasure to me,
she continued, clutching the paper to her chest as tears gathered in her own eyes. Keeping it at home risked Jessica discovering and potentially destroying it. So Emily had entrusted our grandparents with safeguarding this precious memento. Learning this truth, I finally allowed myself to break down, sobbing into Emily's embrace like a child seeking comfort. The realization that I had been loved so deeply all along. That Emily had been watching over me and supporting me in her own way. And the struggles she had faced as a mother, it all came crashing down on me in that moment. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for having the opportunity to hear Emily's true feelings before embarking on my own marriage. With the air cleared between us, I thought the Christmas party would conclude without any further incidents. As the festivities wound down and the guests began to succumb to the effects of alcohol, I noticed Jessica slipping out of the banquet hall, trailing after David, who had excused himself to use the restroom. A sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach, urging me to follow them, but before I could make a move, Michael called out to me, inviting me to join him for a drink. Unable to refuse his request, I found myself trapped, forced to spend some time indulging in beer with Michael and his companions. After a while, I seized the opportunity to escape when Michael and the others got up to refill their glasses, making my way out of the banquet hall in search of David and Jessica. To my surprise, despite supposedly heading to the restroom, there was no sign of them on the first floor. The third floor housed our grandparents' private residence, and the door was securely locked. There were no restrooms on the second floor, leaving only one possible location. Puzzled by their absence, I began to explore the area, my mind racing with possibilities. So, what do you think?
I'm the better woman, aren't I?
It was then that I heard Jessica's voice drifting up from the stairwell leading to the kitchen. The stairs by the kitchen led down to the basement, where the wine cellar was located. Jessica typically avoided alcohol, so what could she possibly be doing in the wine cellar? Moreover, I could hear another voice mingling with hers, indicating that she wasn't alone. Suspicion gnawing at my mind, I made my way down to the basement, only to be greeted by a conversation that left me reeling in disbelief.
David should just be honest with himself. Everyone else already prefers me over Sarah, so why fight it?
Jessica's voice echoed, filled with a smug confidence.
Wait, no. We can't. If Sarah finds out about this.
David's panicked protest reached my ears, his words laced with fear and guilt.
After everything we've done, you're going to back out now? You can't just let a woman like me go this far and then leave me hanging. Are you trying to humiliate me? Or maybe you're into the whole forceful thing?
Jessica taunted, her voice dripping with a dangerous allure. The voice I heard alongside Jessica's belonged to none other than David. Unable to process the unbelievable situation unfolding before me, I stood frozen in front of the door, my mind reeling with shock and disbelief. I knew I needed to see for myself, to confirm what was happening inside, but the fear of what I might discover kept me rooted to the spot, unable to muster the courage to push the door open. Gradually, the sound of Jessica's nasally voice and David's heavy breathing grew louder, and a wave of despair washed over me, plunging my world into darkness. The David I had trusted so completely, the man I had placed all my faith in, was no different from my ex-boyfriend in the end. He had succumbed to Jessica's scheming, just as she had planned all along. Faced with this harsh reality, any love I had felt for him evaporated in an instant.
In the end, David is just like the rest of them,
I muttered to myself, a hollow smile playing across my lips as I sank to the ground, my legs no longer able to support my weight. I had truly believed that David loved me unconditionally, that his devotion to me was unshakable, but here he was, so easily ensnared by Jessica's charms. It was pathetic, really, and I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. It seemed that no matter who they were, the moment Jessica entered the picture, men were helpless to resist her allure. No one truly cared about me, no one valued me for who I was. With that realization, a single tear slipped down my cheek, a stark contrast to the empty smile that still lingered on my face. Steeling my resolve, I slowly pushed the door open, confirming with my own eyes the scene I had already imagined in my mind. The two of them were so lost in their passionate embrace that they failed to notice my presence, their bodies tangled together in a sickening display of betrayal. Fighting back the bile that rose in my throat, I reached for my phone with trembling hands. Aiming the camera in their direction, I captured the damning evidence of their affair, recording every moment of their betrayal before fleeing the scene and locking myself in the nearest restroom. As I struggled to keep my composure, I silently congratulated myself for having the foresight to gather proof, my mind already racing with thoughts of what to do next. It was then that John emerged from the direction of the basement, his face etched with panic as he rushed towards me.
"Sarah, there's a burglary happening!"
he exclaimed, grabbing me by the shoulders as he blurted out his shocking revelation. Utterly baffled by his sudden outburst, I tried to calm him down and make sense of the situation, prompting him to explain further. "Emily said she wanted some wine, so she asked me to fetch a bottle from the wine cellar. I remembered we had some vintage wines stored down there. But when I went to the basement just now, I heard some strange noises." He rambled, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush.
"Our restaurant is closed, so I thought it must be a burglar who snuck in to steal our wine, thinking no one would be around. I locked the door from the outside to trap them inside, so let's call the police. I'll go tell Emily and the others."
John continued, his voice rising with each word. In his panicked state, John had failed to realize that the burglars he had trapped in the basement were none other than David and Jessica. But for me, this turn of events worked in my favor. Knowing that the two of them were now trapped and unable to easily escape, I stopped John from calling the police and instead filled him in on what I had just witnessed. Together, we returned to the banquet hall to share this shocking revelation with the rest of the family. An hour later, as David and Jessica finally finished their sordid affair and attempted to leave the basement, they found themselves faced with an unexpected obstacle.
"What the? The door won't open,"
Jessica muttered, her brow furrowing in confusion.
"What?"
David replied, his voice laced with a growing sense of unease. Realizing that they had been locked inside, the two of them began to panic, their voices rising in a frantic cacophony of fear and desperation. Seizing the moment, I flung the door open with a force that startled them both, my eyes blazing with a fury that could no longer be contained.
"David, what the hell do you think you're doing?"
As the two of them emerged from the wine cellar, they were greeted by the sight of Michael and the rest of the family, all glaring at them with a mixture of shock and disgust.
"Dad? What are you doing here?"
Jessica stammered, her face draining of color as she took in the sea of angry faces before her.
"Don't give me that bullshit. What the hell were you doing in there?
Michael roared, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. Judging by their ashen faces, it was clear that neither Jessica nor David had anticipated the entire family gathering outside the room the moment they stepped out. Unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation, they simply stood there, opening and closing their mouths like fish out of water, unable to utter a single word in their defense.
How do you plan on explaining this situation? Don't even think about trying to claim that nothing happened, because we won't buy it.
I said coldly, my words cutting through the tense silence like a knife. At the sound of my voice, Jessica's head snapped in my direction, her eyes narrowing into a venomous glare.
What the hell is going on here? Are you the one who locked us in the wine cellar?
She demanded, her tone dripping with accusation, as if I were the villain in this twisted scenario. Despite the anger bubbling up inside me at her audacity to play the victim, I kept my composure, crossing my arms and looking down at her with a mixture of pity and disdain.
Don't get it twisted. It was John who locked the door, not me. I only heard about the situation from him. More importantly, what were you two doing down here in the first place?
I questioned, my voice laced with a sickening sweetness.
You were cozied up together in the wine cellar for over an hour. Could it be that you were engaging in some suspicious activities?
I pressed on, relishing in the way their faces paled even further at my insinuation.
What? What the hell are you talking about? Stop making baseless accusations. David mentioned he was interested in wine, so I was just showing him around and unlocking the room.
Jessica stammered, her words tumbling out in a panicked rush as she tried to defend herself against my allegations. Hearing her flimsy excuse, a bold, fearless smile spread across my face as I stepped closer to her, my eyes glinting with a wicked satisfaction.
Oh, is that so? That's strange because I was under the impression that David hated wine.
I mused, my voice dripping with mock confusion.
What?
Jessica breathed, her eyes widening in shock as the realization began to dawn on her.
He tried it once a long time ago and couldn't stand the taste. Since then, he can't even handle the smell of it. He's even complained about it to my parents before.
I explained, my words driving the final nail into her coffin of lies. Trapped by her own deceit, Jessica began to panic, her face growing paler by the second as she struggled to come up with another excuse. Beside her, David was visibly sweating, his brow furrowed in concentration as he desperately tried to think of a way to talk his way out of this mess. Unwilling to let them off the hook so easily, I pulled out my phone, ready to deliver the final blow that would shatter any remaining hope they had of escaping this unscathed.
If you had been honest from the start, maybe things would be different. But since you're so determined to lie your way out of this, I guess I have no choice. Do you know what this is?
I asked, my voice dripping with a sickening sweetness.
That's...
Jessica gasped, her eyes widening in horror as she realized what I was holding.
What the...
David choked out, his face draining of color as he stared at the screen in disbelief. There, playing on my phone, was a video of the two of them engaged in their earlier tryst. Their passionate moans and cries of ecstasy filling the air as their faces were clearly visible in the footage. Faced with irrefutable evidence of their betrayal, the two of them completely lost their composure, descending into a full-blown panic. Reveling in their misery, I couldn't help but laugh at their pathetic display, my words dripping with a mocking provocation.
I thought you said you were just showing him the wine. What exactly is going on here? I'm just a dumb girl, so I don't really understand.
Hey, big sis, care to enlighten me?
What were you two doing down here?
I asked, my voice laced with a sickening sweetness.
No, it's not what it looks like. David forced me into it. He lured me down here and took advantage of me.
Jessica blurted out, quickly turning on David and painting him as the sole perpetrator now that she realized there was no way to deny what had happened. David, caught off guard by her sudden betrayal, opened his mouth to defend himself. And soon the two of them were engaged in a vicious back and forth, each trying to shift the blame onto the other.
That's not true. When I went to use the restroom, Jessica followed me and dragged me down here. She kept saying that she's liked me long before Sarah did and started coming on to me. She even started taking her clothes off on her own.
David shouted, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation.
I tried to refuse at first, but then she threatened me, saying, "Are you trying to humiliate me?" I didn't know what to do. I couldn't bring myself to push her away, and before I knew it, things had gone too far.
He rambled on, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush.
I'm so sorry, Sarah. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. I deeply regret what I've done. Please forgive me.
David pleaded, tears streaming down his face as he begged for my forgiveness. Seeing him reduced to such a pitiful state, my expression twisted in pain, and the words I had been holding back finally spilled from my lips. I trusted you. I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my own heart shattering into a million pieces.
What?
David asked, his eyes widening in shock as he struggled to process the weight of my words. I thought David was different. I believed he only had eyes for me. I whispered, my voice trembling with the weight of my shattered dreams.
I'm so sorry, Sarah. This is all my fault.
David mumbled, his head down in shame as he pressed his forehead against the ground, repeating his apologies over and over again, as if the mere act of groveling could somehow erase the pain he had caused. But with each apology that fell from his lips, I could feel my heart growing colder, the last embers of my love for him fading into nothingness. No matter how much he begged, I knew I could never bring myself to feel the same way about him again.
If you cared about me at all, you would have cherished me and resisted Jessica's advances, no matter what.
I said softly, my words laced with a bitter disappointment that cut deeper than any knife.
I only love you, Sarah. Please believe me. You're the most important person in my life.
David pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation as he reached out to me, his hands trembling with the weight of his guilt.
Shut up, you disgraceful piece of shit!
Michael roared, slapping David's outstretched hand away with a force that sent him stumbling backward. Michael was a man of unwavering integrity, fiercely loyal to his wife and utterly disgusted by infidelity and any form of promiscuity. The fact that his own son had stooped to such deplorable behavior was more than he could bear. With a face twisted in rage, he fixed David with a glare that could have frozen hell itself, his words dripping with venom as he tore into him without mercy.
No matter what your reasons may be, to make the person you claim to love suffer like this. You're a failure as a husband and as a man. Someone who can't even cherish one woman has no right to speak of love.
Michael bellowed, his voice shaking with barely contained fury.
That's right. Do you even understand the gravity of what you've done?
Another relative chimed in, their words laced with disgust and condemnation.
To think you could still utter such words after we've seen this. You've got some nerve.
A third voice added, their tone dripping with disdain. As Michael's family joined in the chorus of condemnation, their voices rising in a cacophony of anger and disappointment, it became clear that they shared his intolerance for deception and betrayal. Perhaps it was because Michael himself was so steadfastly against straying from the righteous path that he found David's weakness in the face of another woman's advances so utterly unforgivable. Faced with the full weight of his family's fury, David crumpled under the onslaught of their words, collapsing to the ground in a pathetic heap as he struggled to find the words to defend himself.
That's right. Even if I was the one who approached him, none of this would have happened if David had just firmly rejected me.
Jessica interjected, her voice dripping with a sickening sweetness that made my stomach churn.
The problem isn't that I made a move on him, but that he was too weak to refuse me. You should be reflecting on your own shortcomings, not blaming others. I was only trying to test the depth of your love for Sarah.
She continued, her words so utterly divorced from reality that everyone present could only stare at her in disbelief, their eyes wide with shock at the sheer audacity of her claims.
What the hell are you saying?
I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as I struggled to wrap my mind around the utter nonsense spewing from her mouth. In response, Jessica reached out and grasped my hand, her eyes shining with a twisted sort of pride as she spoke, as if she truly believed she had been acting in my best interests all along.
Sarah, I'm so sorry. If only I had realized sooner what a fickle man David was, I could have spared you this heartache. I never imagined he could be such a spineless, pathetic excuse for a human being.
She cooed, her voice dripping with false sympathy that made my skin crawl.
From now on, I'll be the one to find you a man truly worthy of your love. So promise me you won't fall for any more trash like him, okay? Just listen to what I say, and everything will be fine.
She continued, her words so utterly delusional that I could feel my patience wearing thinner with each passing second. Just as I was about to open my mouth to put her in her place, a dull thud echoed through the wine cellar, the sound of flesh striking flesh with a force that left everyone stunned.
Don't you dare pretend you were doing this for Sarah's sake. How dare you spout such utter bullshit?
Emily roared, her hand still raised from the slap she had just delivered to Jessica's face. Jessica stood there, her mouth agape as she cradled her reddened cheek, too shocked by the sudden pain to utter a single word in her own defense. But Emily was far from finished, her eyes blazing with a fury that I had never seen before as she continued to tear into my sister without mercy.
Acting for Sarah's benefit? Don't make me laugh. You've never done a single thing for her sake in your entire life. To think you could do something so despicable and still try to shift the blame onto others.
She seethed, her words dripping with a venom that left Jessica trembling in the face of her wrath.
No one is buying your lies anymore. I won't let you pull a stunt like this ever again. From now on, I'll be the one protecting Sarah. So do us all a favor and stay the hell away from her.
Emily declared, her voice ringing with a fierce protectiveness that brought tears to my eyes. It was the first time I had ever seen her unleash such raw, unbridled anger on Jessica, the first time she had stood up for me so clearly and unequivocally. Overwhelmed by the sheer force of her love and the depth of her commitment to my well-being, I couldn't help but choke back a sob, my heart swelling with a gratitude that I had never known before.
What do you mean? You're trying to act like a proper mother now after being so harsh on Sarah all this time? Just because the relatives are watching, you're putting on a good face. I'm the way I am because you pampered me, and I can't measure my worth any other way because you kept comparing me to Sarah. Stop acting like you're not at fault.
Emily, shocked by these words, looked taken aback, and John stepped in front of Jessica to protect Emily.
You're right, we might have raised you the wrong way. But did Emily ever say it was okay for you to do this? Do you think Sarah would be happy seeing you act like this? Every time you get scolded, you use someone as a shield to escape getting hurt. You're just a coward, always running away, blaming others. Everything you're facing now is because of what you've sown.
It was the first time John yelled at her, and Jessica, trembling in fear. I had never heard such a low, intimidating voice from John, who usually seemed out of touch with common sense. Even I was taken aback, and my tears stopped.
You've crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed as a human. You will be punished accordingly. Punished?
Seeing John's serious expression, Jessica trembled, wondering what he would say.
From now on, we won't take care of you. You are banned from contacting any relatives. There is no one in this house to help you anymore. Live on your own. Never show your face again. What?
Jessica was speechless at this unexpected statement. The relatives nodded in agreement with John's words.
I've already talked to everyone. You have no allies left. Pack your things and leave this house immediately. No, wait! I have nowhere to go! I don't care. If you're saying it's our fault for pampering you, then we'll treat you harshly from now on. So leave. Never come back to this house.
Wait. Please. Sarah, I'm sorry. I won't do this again. I'm reflecting on my actions. So please, convince Dad and Mom. Don't abandon me. We're the only twin sisters. I don't want such a sad farewell. Please, forgive me? Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jessica cried and apologized, desperately clinging to my sleeve. But my feelings didn't waver, and I shook off her hand.
It's too late to cry now. It's disgusting. I've never thought of you as my sister, not even for a moment.
What?
Neither you nor David should ever appear before me again. If you do, I'll make you see hell. And I'll definitely demand compensation in court from both of you. Don't think you can get away with this by crying. Wait. Please, Sarah. Listen to me.
Hearing about the court compensation, Jessica turned pale and desperately reached out to stop me. But my parents blocked her path, and Michael and the relatives glared at her, all of them giving her cold stares. Seeing this, she seemed to give up, and with a powerless drop of her head, I left the scene. Thus, I ended my engagement with David and cut off my sisterly ties with Jessica. After that, I sued Jessica for compensation. As John declared, Jessica was disowned. She was also criticized by all the relatives, which must have taken a toll on her mentally. She didn't talk back. However, when it came time to actually kick her out, she seemed to realize the seriousness and kept begging for forgiveness in front of the house. But no one listened to Jessica's pleas, and the neighbors, disturbed by the noise, called the police. When Jessica heard the police sirens, she got scared and fled the house, seeking refuge at a friend's place. Learning about this, I decided to spread the incident among our classmates and acquaintances to further corner her. I gave her a taste of her own medicine. Consequently, those who knew the details stopped sheltering Jessica, labeled her as a person lacking compassion, and severed ties with her. Jessica is now reportedly living a poor life in the mountains of Dallas. David, too, faced cold stares from high school classmates and lost his friendships. Everyone treated him with caution, keeping their distance to avoid any trouble. Moreover, news of the broken engagement spread among his colleagues, making it awkward for him to continue working, so he quit his job in haste. Lacking any particular skills, he's now struggling to find a new job. However, I have no intention of forgiving him. I sued him for compensation, including the cancellation fee for the wedding venue I had booked, and with Michael's help, I now receive monthly payments into my account. Thus, I succeeded in clearing my ties with both of them. I left the apartment I was living in alone and returned to my parents' house, living happily with them. Hey, Sarah. How about this? I think it would look good on you.
Mom, I'm already 30. Just because I couldn't wear it as a child, don't bring clothes with teddy bear patches. Rather, where did you even find that? I'm surprised they make such things for adults.
Emily started filling in the lost time with me, and John smiled warmly as he watched us. Seeing the smiles of those two became my happiness. One day at the airport, on my way back from work, I ran into an old classmate. It was Donald, a guy who had made my life miserable from middle school through high school. Because of Donald, I was pushed to the point of dropping out of high school. His personality hadn't changed even as an adult. Upon seeing me, he immediately demeaned me as the dropout loser. I almost lost it at that moment, but I managed to control my anger and walked away. Later, Donald and I would run into each other again at the airport. "Hey, dropout, this is what an airplane looks like," he said with a malicious smile. When it was revealed that I was the captain, his reaction made me surprised. "My name is Brian, a 38-year-old bachelor." Saying I'm a pilot might make it sound like I followed a path of elite success, but in reality, I dropped out of high school once. I had been subjected to insidious bullying from middle to high school. The start of it all was a fallout with a classmate, Donald. Donald was outgoing, friendly, and popular with everyone. In contrast, my only merit was being serious, and while I did okay in studies, I was bad at socializing. So when Donald, who had been on the same soccer team in elementary and joined the soccer club with me, approached me early on, I was overjoyed. The initial connection was our shared history with soccer. In our group, I was always the butt of the jokes. My inability to deflect the teasing only served as more fodder for Donald's charm and, simultaneously, his cruelty. Initially, I preferred being teased over being alone, accepting my place in the group. I even found joy in making others laugh with my reactions. However, the dynamics slowly began to distort. The way laughter was garnered in the group gradually escalated. At first, I rationalized it as part of friendship dynamics. But perhaps my laughter encouraged it. The jokes gradually turned into blatant mockery and personal attacks. Sometimes, they would half-jokingly apply wrestling moves on me.
"Stop it,"
I would say with a laugh, but no one would ever stop Donald. Instead, everyone laughed while watching us, making me realize I wasn't entertaining them, I was the entertainment. He was just enjoying humiliating me. After that realization, being part of the group became a torment. The teasing I had once brushed off laughingly became unbearable. Walking down the hallway one day, I was smacked on the head as usual. Normally, I'd just laugh it off saying,
"What's that for?"
But that day,
"Stop it,"
I clearly told him. Then,
"What's with you? You're not fun anymore."
He made a displeased face and said,
"Just because you're in the group doesn't mean you can't look like you're enjoying it."
"It's impossible. I'm not having fun."
Huh. What's that supposed to mean? You were always laughing. And who do you think you are, Brian, acting all high and mighty?
He said in a low, intimidating voice, glaring at me. I glared back at him without backing down. He said,
"Whatever,"
and walked away, quickly blending back into the group. From the next day, my life turned into hell. Arriving at school in the morning, not only Donald and the members he incited, but even unrelated classmates began to ignore me. Being ignored was still bearable, but soon they started actively harassing me. He was always the ringleader. At first, I stubbornly continued showing up at school and club activities, but eventually, the pain became too much to bear, and I started missing them. Entering the 9th grade, the stress of exams coupled with their behavior became even more vicious. Having missed nearly half of the 9th grade, my grades inevitably plummeted. I had been considered a candidate for one of the top high schools in the county back in the 8th grade, but now I found myself in a situation where I could only aim for schools 2 or 3 tiers lower. Still, I thought I could escape this situation by graduating middle school, so I tried to focus on my studies. But, as expected, I couldn't concentrate, and worst of all, I ended up going to the same high school as Donald. Up until middle school, Mr. Richard, a teacher, had taken a personal interest in helping me out, scolding Donald and the others, which made things somewhat bearable. The hell continued into high school. Trying to establish new relationships in high school, I ended up in the same class as Donald.
Hey, there's Brian,
Donald declared, grabbing my collar in front of everyone as I walked into the classroom.
Let's all tease him. He loved being teased by everyone in middle school, right?
The classmates initially seemed skeptical, but once they decided I was someone they could disdain, they became endlessly cruel, characteristic of kids this age. Unlike in middle school, there was no teacher willing to protect me. Eventually, my spirit broke, and before I knew it, I couldn't bring myself to go to school anymore. Failing to meet the attendance requirements, I was held back a year, which led to me dropping out of high school. The one who tried to save me was Mr. Richard, my middle school teacher. He was the only teacher who noticed my situation and reached out to me. Not only did he scold Donald and the others, but during the exam period, he let me use his room as a refuge to escape from them. After school, I used to head to his room every day to vent my frustrations. During the 9th grade, when my attendance dropped and I fell behind in studies, he tutored me closely. Unfortunately, despite Mr. Richard's efforts, Donald and his crew's behavior never changed, but I believe he did everything he could. He was my only ally and support at school. Just having him there was like what got me through middle school. Mr. Richard, who was always concerned about me, kept in touch through letters even after graduation. But after continuing to face the same treatment in high school and losing the will to attend, I couldn't bring myself to reply to his letters. One day, he came to my house to apologize in person. "I'm really sorry, I couldn't be there for you when you needed it," he said. When Mr. Richard found out I had stopped going to high school, he brought over loads of information about correspondence high schools and night schools.
Why not start over in a new environment?
It's useless. I'm useless. My self-esteem was damaged to the limit by being ridiculed repeatedly by Donald and the others. Mr. Richard encouraged me, saying,
"Brian, you'll be fine. You'll get what you deserve if the environment changes."
Driven by his passion, I began studying for the GED program through distance learning. I never really hated studying, and with the active support from my parents and Mr. Richard, my studies progressed unbelievably well. Frustrated with myself for breaking under harassment, I refused to let those guys ruin my life and immersed myself in my studies. At that time, my parents, noticing my hard work but also cautioning against overdoing it, took me on a trip for a break. That was when I first boarded an airplane. What surprised me first was the imposing presence of the aircraft before boarding. I remembered how I used to love looking at vehicles in encyclopedias as a kid, especially aircraft. Then, flying in the sky, I was completely captivated by the world above. The gradually receding view of the city, the thrill of breaking through clouds, and the clear skies beyond. The beauty seen from the airplane's window made me feel freed from everything. It was a refreshing view that seemed to erase all the entanglements and regrets over my past failures.
I want to fly freely in the sky. I want to be a pilot.
This vague idea became a solid determination by the time we returned from the trip. It was the first time I had a dream, and I felt my heart leap for the first time in a while. Becoming a pilot is not an easy path. It would be a burden on my parents. But I didn't want to give up on something again. While I was struggling with these thoughts, Mr. Richard visited me again.
"Look at you, Brian, you seem a lot happier."
He noticed my change immediately.
"How's your study going?"
"It's going really well lately. I've found a goal." He looked at me encouragingly. I feared being laughed at, or being told it was impossible for me. For a moment, such thoughts crossed my mind, but then I reminded myself that Mr. Richard would never do that. And then, I gathered my courage and spoke up. "I've thought about becoming a pilot." Mr. Richard's eyes widened, tears welling up in them. Seeing his face light up with joy almost made me cry too.
"That's great. I'll support you. Finding a goal is a wonderful thing. Go for it,
he said with a trembling voice, taking my hand. His words solidified my resolve. After that, I talked to my parents about wanting to become a pilot. My mother, Karen, looked a bit worried, but my father, Thomas, said,
That's great. I thought you've been looking more determined lately, so this was the reason. I'll support you with all I have.
Then, yes, we will. My mother nodded. Afterward, I studied hard, passed the GED program and the aviation school exams. I worked diligently on my studies and training in aviation school and finally obtained my pilot's license. But I wasn't satisfied just yet. Aiming to be a better pilot, I won a recommendation for graduate school, where I studied cutting-edge aviation. The thesis I wrote there received higher praise than I had expected, paving the way for my doctoral studies. After earning my doctorate, I finally felt a sense of accomplishment. Though I considered staying abroad for work, I decided to return home for my parents waiting in my hometown. Back home, I got a job as a pilot with an airline company. One day, while walking to the airport exit in my casual clothes, a man in dirty overalls called out to me. I recognized his face immediately and was struck speechless. It was Donald, unforgettable, who had made my middle and high school years hell. Look who it is, long time no see. The dropout loser who quit high school. What are you doing here? Guess you're a janitor or something. Got anything to say, dropout Brian? I was traumatized, forgetting where I was as my mind went blank. His tone, attitude, and expression. It brought back memories of those hellish school days. Amused by my frozen state, Donald mentioned he was working here as a mechanic. He seemed to think I was a janitor or something, his attitude clearly dismissive. There seemed to be no remorse for nearly crushing a person. You have no idea the pain you caused me. I almost lost my composure but managed to hold back my anger and simply said,
Well then, good luck,
and quickly left the scene. Even after Donald was out of sight, my heart continued to beat uncomfortably for a while. Later, as the shock of that encounter began to fade, I received a call from a familiar person. It was Mr. Richard. Apparently, hearing about my achievements, Mr. Richard decided it wasn't too late to pursue his dream of graduate studies and had finally been accepted into a prestigious university in England. When I was genuinely happy for him.
There's something I'd like to ask you,
he said.
I'll be flying to England, and I'd love to be on a plane piloted by you.
Of course. I readily agreed, and then did everything I could to secure the pilot's seat for Mr. Richard's flight. The day of departure arrived. It was very cold, and I was walking around the aircraft for an external check, wearing a jacket over my captain's uniform. Then, I encountered Donald again. Everyone was at their posts, leaving him and me alone. Seeing me, Donald laughed and pretended to hit me with a tool. I flinched, and he said, What, got scared? It's just a joke. With the same immaturity as before. Hey, dropout, this is what an airplane looks like. Donald sneered openly, when a voice called from behind me.
Captain!
It was Susan, one of the cabin attendants.
Captain?
Donald looked confused, but Susan called out to me directly.
Captain, it's time for the flight. Please prepare.
Understood. I'll be right there. Leaving a stunned Donald behind, I quickly made my way to Susan. Donald clicked his tongue behind me, but I felt a sense of vindication, almost like I had won something. Soon it was time to board, and the passengers began to enter the plane one by one. Seeing Mr. Richard among them made me smile involuntarily. Soon, all the passengers were seated, and the hatch was sealed. As the captain, I introduced myself and promised a safe journey through the skies to all passengers. I was sure Mr. Richard could hear my voice too. Thinking this made me feel even prouder to be piloting as a captain. Donald was a thing of the past. I can't forget the humiliation, but I'm not the same person I was back then. Reminding myself of this, I prepared to take off. The plane took off without a hitch. But then, an unexpected event occurred. A message from the control tower informed us of a sudden change in weather. Almost immediately, the plane was hit by a terrible storm. The aircraft shook violently in the blowing wind. It was an extraordinary shaking, unlike anything normal. Panic ensued inside, and amidst the chaos of reports coming through my headphones, I felt a moment of confusion. But I haven't accumulated over 10 years of experience for nothing. Plus, this situation closely resembled something I had written about in my thesis.
Calm down. It's okay. I can do this after all the hard work I've put in.
I collaborated with the co-pilot and cabin crew to ensure the aircraft's safety and to calm the panic. Soon, we managed to escape the dire situation. The aircraft gradually stabilized. When we safely landed and saw the airport, I felt a wave of relief, but the job wasn't done yet. As the captain, I apologized for the incident and then wished all passengers and crew success in their future endeavors before finishing my duties. Of course, the image of one particular mentor crossed my mind. Later, the details of the malfunction that had troubled the aircraft were revealed. It turned out that a certain part was damaged. Despite thorough double checks, I wondered why the maintenance had been neglected. When the authorities analyzed the camera footage, it was revealed to be Donald's doing. The malfunction was intentional. Initially denying the accusations, Donald's face flushed the moment I appeared. Noticing something was off, everyone turned their gaze towards me. I summarized my relationship with Donald.
It's all in the past. How long will you hold on to it? That's why you're foolish.
My impromptu remark seemed to make Donald realize he had dug his own grave. He tried to deny it hastily, but it was too late. The gaze of everyone present turned towards Donald. I'm not the timid person I used to be. Looking Donald in the eye, I made it clear.
The one who's been holding on to the past is you. You intended this as harassment against me, but do you realize how many lives you endangered with your actions? Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?
Prompted by my words, those present began to voice their criticism towards him. Donald, looking pale and shrinking away, eventually broke down and apologized, but that couldn't erase the crime he committed. He admitted his guilt, faced disciplinary action, and was criminally charged, leading to his dismissal. His actions, both past and present, certainly cannot be forgiven. However, I couldn't help but feel pity for Donald, who had driven himself to this point by fixating on and trying to sabotage another person. A few days later, Susan and I went out for a meal together. Susan had invited me, asking,
"Would you like to go out for a meal together on our next day off?"
Being an excellent cabin attendant, Susan always looked dignified and beautiful, but in her casual clothes, she seemed even more so. I had secretly been attracted to her for a long time, but I had nearly given up on the idea, thinking that someone 8 years my junior could never be interested in me. However, our relationship rapidly grew closer following that incident. Could it be the suspension bridge effect? No, maybe it's slightly different. As I was eating, pondering over such thoughts,
"Brian, you were really cool the other day,"
Susan said. I was at a loss for words, and Susan smiled softly. What do you mean?
"When there was trouble, you gave calm instructions, right? Thanks to you, I was able to act calmly too. It was wonderful."
It was an embarrassing compliment.
"But I feel responsible for involving so many people in my problem with Donald." "That humble side of you is also wonderful."
Are you teasing me?
"Not at all."
Susan covered her mouth with her hand and smiled gently. Her surprising statements didn't end there.
"I'm the type to make a move on someone I'm interested in,"
she said. I was stunned. I could feel my face turning red. Then, Susan and I started dating. We both travel a lot for work, in the sky or abroad, but she always wanted to go overseas even in her private time. I also love flying, so traveling together is a great joy. France, Canada, Vietnam, Hawaii. We've made many memories in various places with her. Each time, I felt the wounds in my heart healing. I'm planning to propose to her soon. I intend to invite Mr. Richard to our wedding. It must be the strange connection that he helped forge. That's what I felt. Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you guys use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you. Both we were taken aback by Emily and Wilson's words. A bathroom ban? That's just unthinkable. No matter how much they dislike us, such behavior is inexcusable. We have endured harsh words from our son and his wife before. As we're the kind of people who dislike fights, we've always quietly accepted their treatment. But now, we've reached our limit. We need to make it clear what happens when they make enemies of us. I started plotting a scenario for revenge. I'm sure this plan will work. My name is Sarah, a 62-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband. I met Johnson, my husband, at the company where we used to work. After Johnson's persistent pursuit, we started dating and smoothly transitioned into marriage. I was blessed with a son with Johnson. A lively boy. We named him Wilson and raised him with care. Wilson grew up healthily and eventually found a job. He married a woman named Emily and built a family. I remember the feeling genuinely happy when he first introduced Emily to us. But that happiness didn't last long. Everything went awry when I realized why she had married him. After marriage, they lived with us. One day, Wilson and Johnson were out, and only Emily and I were at home. At first, we were chatting amicably in the living room, but then Emily's mobile phone rang. It seemed she received a call. Sorry, Sarah, it looks like it's from a friend. With that, she excused herself and went back to her room. Left alone in the living room, I decided to clean the house to pass the time. As I was passing Emily's room, I inadvertently overheard her conversation. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't help but hear. Seriously, those old folks are living too long. If they suddenly died, we could get the inheritance. I married into the family for the president's fortune, but this is just hell. Her words felt like a cold shower to me. Actually, Johnson's father was the president of well-known top-tier company. However, the company was set to be inherited by his brother. Still, being part of the president's family, Johnson had some share of the wealth. It turned out Emily had married Wilson with that very intention in mind. They probably believed that once we passed away, the inheritance would become theirs. In fact, we had always treated Wilson and his wife with this in mind. Such behavior couldn't be tolerated. I shared this with Johnson that night. Initially, he was shocked, saying, "Really?" but he trusted my words. After discussing, we decided not to act immediately but to observe if Emily would reveal her true intentions. Maybe, in the meantime, she might change her attitude and start treating us like a real family. It was a decision made with the faint hope. But things didn't go as expected. To test Wilson and his wife, we observed their behavior. We invited them out, asked for help with chores, and so on. Gradually, they seemed to find us a nuisance, and their attitude changed. "Wilson, you're free now, right? I'm sorry to ask you, but can you give me a hand to do the laundry? My back hurts." One day, seeing Wilson relaxing in the living room, I asked him. Although Emily had been the one to speak harshly that day, Johnson suspected they might be in this together. We suspect that maybe Wilson feels in the same way. So, I started to approach Wilson to understand his feelings. At my request, Wilson looked up from his mobile phone, sighed with annoyance, and said, "Can't you do that yourself, Mom? You're a mother, after all. Shouldn't you be able to handle the household chores by yourself?" He then returned his gaze to his mobile phone. It became clear that he had no intention of helping. His attitude seemed to say, "I have no intention of being a family with you." This thought sent a chill down my spine. "Don't say that.
family should help each other when in trouble. You have your own family now, Wilson. You need to act responsibly.
My voice trembled, reflecting my fear. If my suspicions were true, it meant that even Wilson, whom we had lovingly raised, was betraying us. That was something I couldn't bear. Desperately, I pleaded, "Please help me." But Wilson didn't even look up from his phone or show any sign of getting up from the sofa. His unwillingness to help was evident. Persisting in my request, he let out a heavy sigh and continued.
"Look,"
he continued.
"Enough is enough. Yes, you're my mother, but that doesn't give you the right to be selfish. I have a wife, Emily, and I need to work for her. I'm already exhausted every day, and now you're asking me to do chores too? That's cruel. Don't ask us to do such things anymore. We are essentially strangers."
Essentially strangers. Those words pierced deeply into my heart. It confirmed my fears. Both Wilson and Emily seem to be after Johnson's inheritance. They seem indifferent to us, thinking as long as they receive the inheritance, that's all that matters. This betrayal from family deeply wounded me. Yet, we couldn't foresee something even worse. I immediately told Johnson about Wilson's possible intent for the inheritance. Johnson, seemingly already convinced.
"I thought as much."
He nodded. And so, our family dynamics became distorted. Amidst all this, Wilson and his wife decided to move out. When they brought it up, we couldn't help but feel relieved. By then, living with them had become unbearable. Even sharing the same house with them was distressing. They wanted to live in a new single-family home, which would require a significant amount of money. To hasten their move, we decided to provide financial assistance.
"Dad, Mom, thanks. Family is indeed valuable."
Knowing the underlying meaning of Wilson's words, we couldn't genuinely rejoice. The construction of their new house was completed, and it was the day of their move. They packed up some of their belongings and left the house. A week later, we visited their new home with a housewarming gift. Though I didn't want to go, I remembered my father-in-law teaching about maintaining certain courtesies, so I decided to endure it a bit. "Nice house, isn't it? Smells like new construction." Their home was more beautiful than expected, probably due to the money spent on it. After being shown around various rooms, when we gave the celebration gift in the living room.
"Thank you so much,"
she said. She seemed pleased as she put away the gift. While chatting in the living room, I felt the need to use the restroom. "Where's the bathroom? May I use it?" I said. To my request, Wilson and his wife responded unbelievably. "Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom?
Dirty old people are banned from using it.
We use that toilet too, you know."
"If you use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it?"
Followed by his words,
"Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you."
Their words made me feel dizzy. It was too cruel, regardless of how much they disliked us. At that moment, they were like strangers to me. There was no familial affection left. That's why I decided to start my revenge. I planned to ruin them thoroughly. I secretly devised a scenario for it. Exchanging glances with Johnson, who was just as stunned. It seemed Johnson was thinking the same as me.
"We don't want to be a nuisance, and since we've given the housewarming gift, maybe we should leave if we're not wanted."
There was no reason to stay in their house any longer. We had fulfilled our duty by giving a housewarming gift. If they were going to be that terrible to us, we didn't need to stay.
"Right. Our presence here only seems to bother them. It's better to leave now."
I had anticipated being unwelcome, but to be told things like being banned from using the toilet or to go in the bushes was too much.
"Yeah, leave right now. Don't want this house getting old and musty because of some old people. Don't stay any longer than necessary."
Old people making the house musty? That's just absurd. Realizing how much my own son despised us was a bit of a shock. But I couldn't see Wilson as my son anymore. I'd deal with these conflicting feelings later. For now, the priority was to leave. And don't come over unless absolutely necessary. We've got your gift, so you're of no use to us now. Maybe see you at the baby shower, but that's it. Even though she demanded us to leave right away, she still wants a gift. What greedy people. Though giving them gifts was burdensome, we were fortunately not short on money. So, to keep the peace and calm myself, I accepted it.
Then let's sever ties. If you despise us so much, it must be hard to continue as a family, right? Anything is fine with me as long as we don't have to deal with you and your family, who are troublesome.
Are they high on their own anger? Emily quickly agreed to my suggestion, likely not understanding the consequences of her decision. We gathered our things and left Wilson's house. They hardly even saw us out. But this was just the beginning of our revenge. I couldn't wait to see them fall into the hell we were about to create. I can't help but look forward to that moment. Back home, I shared the revenge plan with Johnson. He said,
"This is going to be interesting."
He laughed and was in agreement with my plan. They say spouses become like mirrors of each other, and I really felt that was true. Since then, we had been very busy. To complete our revenge, various preparations were necessary. Before we knew it, about a week had passed. Despite being busy, we were leading a calm life without any major incidents with Wilson and his wife. But it seemed about time for a disruption. As I was expecting this, the phone rang. Johnson and I exchanged glances. Sure enough, it was Wilson on the line. I put the call on speaker so Johnson could hear and spoke to Wilson.
"Hello, Wilson? What's up? Did something happen?"
It was surprising he called so nonchalantly after what had happened. Normally, after such an incident, I'd think it would be awkward to make a phone call. But Wilson, sounding cornered and desperate, blurted out.
"What's happened, you ask? What have you two done? Thanks to you, I'm in a terrible situation. Do something about it now."
Wilson's statement was disjointed, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Of course, I had orchestrated this revenge, so I could guess what might be happening to him.
"What exactly do you mean? Tell me everything from the start, I don't understand."
Since I had no idea what he was accusing us of, I couldn't respond. Urging Wilson to explain, he started his story in an angry tone. It seemed the trouble started when he went to work after the incident. While working, Wilson noticed something unusual. The looks directed at him by his colleagues were unusually cold. Wilson, who tends to be overly concerned with others' perceptions, found it unbearable to stay at work and left early that day. Hoping it was just his imagination, he went to work again the next day, but the cold stares remained unchanged. He confronted a colleague about it, but all he got in response was, "Ask yourself." Just that, and they wouldn't tell me anything more. Furthermore, it wasn't just his department colleagues who were giving him cold stares. It seemed as if everyone in the company, from high-ranking superiors to colleagues in other departments, were looking at him with disdain. He felt as if every employee he encountered was regarding him with contempt. Despite racking his brain, Wilson couldn't think of a reason for the cold treatment at work. He hadn't made any mistakes on the job. Eventually, he surmised that my husband, Johnson, a member of the company's founding family, and I must have been involved.
"What have you two done? Because of you, I can't work anymore. You need to take responsibility."
Wilson lashed out at us one-sidedly. Indeed, the frigid reception he faced wasn't a figment of his imagination, it was a part of our scheme. We had promptly informed my brother-in-law about the ordeal with Wilson and his wife. He values us greatly and was furious upon hearing it. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law isn't one to keep secrets. He inadvertently leaked our story to his secretary and other managerial staff. Soon enough, the entire company knew about their misdeeds, and everyone began to scorn Wilson.
"This is too much. Fix it now. I can't work in that kind of environment."
Indeed, someone like him, who is easily swayed by others' opinions, couldn't possibly continue working in such a hostile environment. However, his employment was actually a result of nepotism. He had been lazy during his student days, lacking notable educational achievements or qualifications. Since he couldn't find a satisfactory job, his sympathetic uncle hired him at his company. Could someone like Wilson really manage a proper job search? From my perspective, it seemed unlikely. That company was his only option. Yet, working there under current circumstances was impossible for him.
Please, you have to do something. I can't work under those stairs. You caused this, right? Then fix it,
he yelled over the phone. But I had no intention of forgiving him.
We've disowned you, remember? Why are you asking for help now? That was all Emily's doing. I always considered you and Dad as my family. Families are supposed to help each other, right? So, help me.
Indeed, families should help each other. But he had misunderstood the meaning of family. You help because they are your family, not treat them as family only when help is needed. Feeling the conversation was pointless, I ended the call with him. Afterward, my phone kept ringing incessantly, so I blocked his number. That was how we completely severed ties with our own son. Our revenge was far from over. The day after our conversation with Wilson, my phone rang again. This time, it was Emily.
Sarah, please open the entrance. I have something to discuss, including about Wilson. Let me in quickly.
As soon as I answered the phone, she blurted out such things. It seemed that she, thinking it best to resolve matters directly, was waiting at the entrance of our house, eager to talk. Well, it was our former house, after all.
Emily, we're not at that house anymore.
Indeed, it was our former home. Since then, we had sold the house where we lived with them and moved to a new home. A brand new, sparkling single-family home. Our new home, chosen with a slightly competitive spirit, was more spacious and grander than Wilson and Emily's.
What? Then where are you? Things are terrible here. If we don't know where you are, how can we receive the inheritance? Tell me your current address.
She seemingly failed to comprehend the meaning of disownment. To disown means no longer being family, and inheritance is not passed to non-family members. We had even updated our will to ensure that, come what may, Wilson and his wife would not receive any inheritance. However, she appeared to misunderstand, thinking that if some family connection remained, they could still inherit.
Emily, you can no longer receive any inheritance.
We've disowned you, remember?
We're no longer family. Why would we give an inheritance to someone who's not family?
I was astonished at her lack of understanding. Her ignorance was so profound that it was almost laughable. Surprised by my response, she exclaimed.
What?
She exclaimed in a loud voice.
What? I didn't know that. That's a real problem if we can't get the inheritance. Let's forget about the disownment, okay? We're still family, right?
Her self-centeredness was astounding. It was baffling how someone could be so obsessed with money. Her illogical and selfish statements left me speechless. Misinterpreting my silence as agreement, she continued.
How about we live together? You've moved out of this house, right? I just realized how lonely it is without you, Sarah. Our house is big, so you can live here too. Let's live together as a family.
And yet, this was the same person who had once called us dirty old people and drove us out. Now she was even suggesting living together, clearly all for the sake of inheritance. It was obvious that restarting life with them was out of the question. I wondered if she even understood that. Could she really not understand even that?
Sorry, but we'll have to decline. And from now on, please don't contact us. We've disowned you, so we're no longer family. And non-family members won't inherit anything. Please understand and give up. No! That's unacceptable! Please, Sarah, forgive us!
When I firmly declared our disownment, Emily seemed to finally grasp its meaning and desperately clung to any hope. But my decision was final. And likely Johnson's as well. Therefore, I ended the call with her and immediately blocked her number. This way, she couldn't contact us again. They wouldn't know our current whereabouts. Essentially, we've completed our disownment. We felt a sense of relief, having cleanly severed this unpleasant connection. Later, I heard from acquaintances and brother-in-law that Wilson and Emily began fighting incessantly over the inheritance and their jobs, leading to a divorce. They argued bitterly over alimony and property division, even hiring lawyers and taking their disputes to court. After the divorce was finalized, Emily returned to her parents' home. She seemed certain that her biological parents would accept her, but when they actually saw her and learned of the situation, they were furious. Apparently, she was promptly kicked out of the house. Wilson, having quit his job, struggled to find new employment and is now working tirelessly in part-time roles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Johnson and I are enjoying a peaceful and happy life. The weight of the Wilson affair lifted, we've found newfound freedom. We're planning to go on a trip soon, taking brother-in-law and his wife along. Johnson and I have been making plans for this trip together. It's our way of thanking him for his help in our revenge. We are carefully planning this vacation. Family is about supporting each other and helping in times of need. But that doesn't always mean being related by blood. Some, like Wilson and Emily, disregard even their own family. This incident has deeply ingrained that lesson in us.
With this, I'll finally get the inheritance.
Right before losing consciousness, I heard my husband's voice. I had just finished a hospital visit and was about to head home when suddenly a car sped towards me. I realized it too late to escape and was hit. Amidst the intense pain and fading consciousness, I heard what my husband had said. What did he mean by inheritance? Why was he even here? As I tried to make sense of it, I lost consciousness without seeing him. 3 days later, I woke up and saw on the TV that my husband was acting the part of a grieving, loving husband. I was furious. He was garnering sympathy while pretending to be a good person, even though he had schemed everything. I couldn't let him have his way anymore and decided to seek revenge. I am Jennifer Brown, 29 years old. A music teacher. I've always loved the piano and dreamed of becoming a pianist since childhood. After practicing desperately every day, I managed to get into a music college, but I was overwhelmed by the high level of competition and eventually gave up. I obtained a teaching license and became a music teacher. Currently, I work at a local public middle school, where I'm not just a teacher but also the advisor of the choir club, leading a busy life. Being a teacher is tough, but the kids admire me calling teacher, so I was enjoying fulfilling days. Last year, I married Robert, whom I had dated since college. We were at the peak of happiness in both our personal and professional lives, but it didn't last. My husband Robert was just a mess. He worked at a bar, and because of the nature of his job, he had late shift. Our daily rhythms were completely different, and we began to drift apart. He often drinks after work, so I find him sleeping at the entrance returning home drunk in the morning. Initially, I thought it was just part of his job. But when I came home tired from work, I found clothes thrown about, and the table littered with empty instant noodle cups and finished drink bottles. Seeing this mess every day, my anger just kept building up.
Robert, put your clothes in the laundry. And can you clean up your mess?
What? Stop nagging. I'll do it later.
Later? You always say that and never do it. Do it now.
Frowning, Robert clicked his tongue in annoyance.
If it bothers you so much, do it yourself. You're such a nagging woman. What? I'm tired from work every day. Why do I have to take care of you? Can't you at least take care of your own things?
I'm tired too, you know. Do you think you're the only one? Or do you think you're superior to me because you earn more? I denied that, and Robert sighed.
Then you should do it.
Don't order me around like that. Saying this, Robert lazily lay down on the sofa and started fiddling with his mobile phone. Despite shorter working hours than me, he never helped with housework and just drank around and slept at home. I ended up doing all the cleaning and laundry. Recently, our dates had stopped and we just argued more. Robert was very handsome. He was popular in college that he even had fans from neighboring universities. I felt superior just being able to marry him. I was smitten with the gentlemanly Robert during our courtship, but now I wondered why I married him. However, everyone has their good and bad sides. I thought maybe it was okay for someone handsome to have a flawed personality, so I decided to bear with it. Half a year after getting married, Robert, who usually went out even on his days off, seemed restless one morning. When I finished cleaning up after breakfast, he called me. "Actually, the bar's been doing poorly lately. I'm short on cash. Can you lend me some?" "What? Are you that short on money? What did you spend it on?" He had been saying for months that his salary had decreased and he couldn't pay living expenses. But his salary was supposed to be entirely disposable, yet he claimed to be short on money. "You know, sometimes I go out for drinks with friends. Alcohol costs a lot. If it's really for the shop, you should get reimbursed for expenses. It's ridiculous to pay out of your own pocket." "No, it's not that. I mean, I need it for studying. I have to know other bars' menus and stuff for research." Robert's stammering explanation seemed suspicious. "How much do you need?" "You'll give it to me?" $200. Just $200 is fine." I sighed, and Robert happily hugged me. I was exasperated by his opportunistic behavior, but it was exactly this kind of charm that always ensnared me. I took out $200 from my wallet and handed it to him. He hugged me again. "I really made the right choice marrying Jennifer. Thank you so much." Because of our constant fighting these days, I felt over the moon when he hugged me while I was exasperated with him. I felt like I had to support him, who had a tough job. But then, he started asking for money almost every month. The amount he wanted kept increasing, and before I knew it, I was giving him as much as $1,000 monthly. For me, just a teacher, it was quite tough to pay $1,000 in addition to regular living expenses. Despite my efforts to save, my savings were rapidly depleting. "Robert, can you pay back even a little of the money I gave you?" "What? Why all of a sudden? You gave me that money, why should I give it back?" "It's getting hard to make ends meet. If I keep giving you money, I won't be able to pay for gas or water." When I spoke to Robert before he went to work, he made a face as if it was a hassle. "I can't help it, my salary is too low." "You could if you tried to save a bit, like cutting down on eating out." "I'm doing that for the bar. Are you trying to interfere with my work? Then sell your piano. That'll bring in good money." Saying that, he left the house. My piano is as precious to me as life itself. It was a gift from my father when I was 2 years old. I need it for practice as a music teacher, there's no way I can part with it. Yet, Robert, who casually drinks around, coldly suggested selling it, which infuriated me. After that, Robert and I stopped speaking. He didn't try to talk to me either, and our marital relationship was practically in ruins. I was contemplating divorce when an incident occurred. While playing the piano, a pain shot through my wrist. The pain, like an electric shock from the wrist to the fingertips, became unbearable. When I visited the hospital, I was diagnosed with tendinitis. "If it gets worse, you might need surgery, so you should get a thorough examination at a bigger hospital." Told this at a nearby clinic, I was given a referral letter. Then, I headed to the general hospital in the next town. If my wrist pain worsens, I might not be able to play the piano anymore. And if I can't play, I might lose my job. If that happens, I don't know what to do to make a living. Having focused solely on playing the piano and not having done any other job, I thought changing careers would be difficult. Before the consultation, I felt anxious and heavy-footed. However, the doctor, after seeing the X-rays, smiled and said it was okay. "Let's observe for now. If possible, please rest your hand. Don't play the piano for about a week, and if the pain worsens, come back for another visit." I was relieved to hear that it wasn't serious enough for surgery. It happened when I stepped out the parking, just as I was about to leave the hospital triumphantly. "Watch out!" I heard a woman scream and turned around in shock to see a car speeding towards me. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move properly. Then, an immense impact hit my body.
It's an accident. Call an ambulance. Get a doctor.
I heard various voices. Amidst fading consciousness, a familiar voice reached my ears.
With this, the inheritance plan will work out.
I heard a distinctly familiar voice amidst the others. But I lost consciousness before I could identify the speaker. 3 days later, I woke up to the ceiling of a hospital room. When I tried to sit up, intense pain shot through my body. Ow, it hurts.
Ms. Brown, can you hear me? I'll go get the doctor, just wait here.
I couldn't respond to the nurse's voice. She hurried out, and then the doctor came running.
Ms. Brown, do you know where you are?
The hospital?
Correct. You were hit by a car after your last visit and have been hospitalized. You haven't woken up for 3 days, so we were worried.
I was shocked to hear it had been 3 days, but I couldn't voice it. The nurse and doctor then explained my current situation. I had been hit by a car and suffered multiple complex fractures throughout my body. I was still in a period of absolute rest, not even allowed to sit up.
It must be boring just lying there. Do you want to watch TV? You can watch it while lying down.
The nurse turned on the TV for me, ensuring my comfort. Coincidentally, the TV was covering my accident.
Oh, you probably don't want to see this, do you? Should I change the channel?
No, please leave it. I want to watch. I couldn't take my eyes off the news. It reported that a woman named Amelia, who hit me with her car, was arrested for dangerous driving causing injury. Seeing the perpetrator's photo, everything made sense to me. Then I realized that the voice talking about receiving an inheritance when I was hit was Robert's. He had intentionally run me over with a car for money. However, the news only reported that he was in Amelia's car as a friend, nothing more. The screen switched to Robert.
I never imagined that the car I was in would cause an accident and hit my wife. I keep seeing that scene in my dreams. I can't sleep at night.
I exploded with anger at his tearful interview. This accident was undoubtedly schemed by Robert. I couldn't stand him causing me this accident for inheritance and then continuing to act like a good husband. Determined not to let Robert have his way anymore, I vowed revenge. 4 hours after waking up, Robert burst into the room, panting.
Jennifer! Thank goodness you're awake!
I shook off Robert's hand as he tried to grasp mine uninvited. What's wrong? Are you still in pain?
Yes, I am.
My whole body is in excruciating pain, all because of you. What are you talking about? The atmosphere grew tense, making even the nearby nurse's expression stiffen. Trying to lighten the mood, Robert forced a smile. Are you still confused? Is there anything you want to eat? I'll go buy it. I don't want anything.
Can you please leave my room right now?
Why are you saying that? Jennifer, you're acting strange.
It's not strange at all. The accident was schemed by you for the inheritance, wasn't it?
Robert looked surprised at my words. What are you talking about? Why would I do something like that?
Really? Then why did you take out a high-value life insurance policy a month before the accident? You said you couldn't even afford to pay the living expenses because your salary was low.
I was told it's good to have insurance in case something happens. Amelia, the girl who hit Jennifer with her car, she works in insurance sales. She used to work part-time at my bar. Robert had given the same explanation when he took out the insurance. They had been close since her part-time days, and after she got a job at an insurance company, they kept in touch. He said he felt sorry for her as she was struggling to sell policies. As he worried about getting scolded by her boss and having low pay, he decided to take out a policy to help her out. The insurance was taken out because you, Jennifer, earn more than me, right? If something happened and you couldn't work, it would be a problem, so I contracted the insurance for you. Isn't that reasonable? Hearing that, it seemed like his explanation might not be wrong.
You're in a situation where you have to borrow money from me and can't pay the living expenses, yet you can afford insurance premiums? If you can pay that much, why not repay me?
Don't say that. I got the insurance for your sake. Robert said this while holding my hand. His expression looked genuinely concerned, but I couldn't bring myself to trust him.
If that's the case, you won't mind if the insurance money doesn't come in, right? I need quite a lot of money for surgery and hospitalization. I'll use the insurance money we received, so please transfer the entire amount to my account.
What? All of it? Is that much really necessary?
It might be. If it's not enough, will you pay the rest, Robert?
What? Not enough. That can't be true. Robert's face stiffened as he muttered to himself. Seeing him like this, the nurses also cast suspicious glances. I beckoned Robert to come closer and whispered so only he could hear.
It's useless to lie anymore. There isn't much insurance money because I'm alive, and there's zero inheritance. You must be disappointed.
Robert frowned upon hearing this.
Zero inheritance? What do you mean? It means there's almost no savings. Did you think you would get all my money if I was gone? Why is there none? You're a public servant, you earn well, right?
Robert's voice grew louder, and a nurse frowned upon overhearing him.
I was lending money to you, Robert. How much do you think a teacher's salary is? I'm still in my 20s, I don't earn that much. Plus, there are living expenses to pay. I never had any financial leeway. You've got to be kidding. What was all this for, then?
Robert hung his head, clutching at his forehead. My anger surged at his true nature showing.
You won't get away with this easily. You'll be arrested too if they find out you were an accomplice. No one will believe that. Did you see the news? I'm the devoted husband worried about his wife. No one will believe anything you say. They'll just think you've gone mad from hitting your head.
While saying this, Robert laughed.
You can say that now, but not for long.
I replied calmly to Robert's provocation. Then, he looked at me with a cold gaze.
Don't get cocky. You should have just gone to the other world.
I despised him for saying such things so casually. I sighed, waiting for the moment of revenge. Just as I sighed, the door of the hospital room opened abruptly, and men in a suit entered.
Who the hell are you? We're the police. Is what you just said true? What? What are you talking about? I'm just worried about my wife.
Ignoring Robert, who was sweating and panicking, the police reached for my bedside and took out a mobile phone. The phone was in the middle of a call.
We've heard everything. Even the part about she should have gone to the other world. What? Why are the police?
He turned pale and started to tremble.
I called them. I wanted their help to uncover the truth about the accident. Thanks to you, I could fully expose your true nature. What, you? Officer, this is a misunderstanding. I just have a quick temper, and I thought Jennifer was picking a fight, so I snapped. It's not really about the money.
No one will believe those words now.
Then show me evidence that I'm the perpetrator of the accident.
Robert kicked the bed in frustration. I glared at him and turned to the police.
The woman currently arrested, Amelia, is his mistress. They've been close for quite a while. What? Don't say such nonsense without evidence. There is evidence. I had hired a private detective agency to investigate you. We have photos of you with Amelia and records of your activities over the past few months. Lying won't help you now.
Ever since Robert frequently started asking me for money, I suspected he was in debt and hired a private detective agency investigate. The investigation revealed that he was having an affair, spending money on drinks and hotels daily. Knowing his mistress's face, I was certain he was involved in the accident when I saw her on the news. The police were making a phone call to search my house while listening to the conversation. Meanwhile, Robert was sweating and visibly shaken.
So you ran out of money I gave you,
and planned this accident to get the inheritance and insurance money, planning to live with her. Isn't that right?
That's just your wild imagination.
Then I'll take the insurance money. Withdraw it now and bring it to me." Robert fell silent. It seems like he doesn't want to give up the money at all. Even though Robert refuses to hand over the insurance money despite the situation, the surrounding skepticism grows. "I've heard from the police. They're concerned about how much you've been worrying about that woman."
"Well, she's my friend. It's natural to be concerned."
"The police told me they're concerned about how much you worry about the other woman. You're not even mad at Amelia for what happened to me. And why were you at the hospital that day, at that time?" "It was a weekday morning when I went to the hospital. Robert should have been getting ready for work around noon, and it was the time when I finished my appointment. Yet, he was inexplicably near a hospital in a neighboring city."
"I just happened to have a day off."
"On your day off, you were at the hospital? There are no places around there that you would visit. You weren't being treated there, so there must have been some reason you were there." Robert was speechless, sweating profusely. The police then restrained him. "We'll ask for the details at the station. Please come with us."
"Wait. I'm not guilty. It's all a misunderstanding by Jennifer."
His desperate excuses were ignored by the police, who remained unfazed with a stern expression. "Officer, if he had planned the accident, what kind of punishment could he face?" "Well, if it's premeditated, it could be attempted murder. We need to hear the full story first, though."
"Attempted murder? Help me! Jennifer, I'm not guilty. Forgive me."
Robert, pale as a ghost, shook off the police's grip and clung to my bed.
"I admit I was wrong for cheating and borrowing money. I'm sorry. But this time I was just in the car. I'm not guilty."
Before I lost consciousness, I heard your voice, Robert, saying now we'll get the inheritance as planned. How can I forgive someone who did this for money? When I spoke up, he started making unbelievable statements.
"What? Are you sure about that? If I get arrested, it will reflect badly on you too. You'll have trouble at work. It's in your best interest to be careful."
Why should I forgive you? Do you even realize what you've done? I plan to divorce you, and whether you get arrested or not is none of my concern. I sighed in exasperation at his shocked expression.
"Wait. Talking about divorce at a time like this? What do you mean? How can I live without Jennifer?"
I made a further attack on Robert, who held his head in despair. "That's not my problem. Just so you know, I was planning to divorce even without this incident. I have proof of your infidelity, and I'll get a hefty compensation in the divorce trial."
"Compensation in a divorce trial? How can I possibly pay that? If I get arrested, I'll lose my job too."
That's your own fault for committing a crime. You should have thought twice before doing such things. Robert then knelt down, defeated.
"I was tricked. Amelia said to me, if you wanted money, you should have just taken out insurance and staged an accident. Initially, I was supposed to drive, but since my license was suspended, she decided to drive. It's all her fault."
Robert shouted. Hearing Robert try to lighten his sentence even in this situation, I couldn't contain my fury. Tricked or not, I don't care. I'll never forget you saying I should have gone to the other world. That was your true feeling.
"That's a lie. I didn't mean it."
I can't believe such words. I never want to have anything to do with you again, Robert. I'll consult a lawyer about the divorce, so never contact me again.
"No, that's a lie. Stop it. I'm not bad. Let go."
He started to thrash around, but he was warned that further resistance could lead to obstruction of justice charges, and he quietly left the hospital room with the police. The next day, I learned from the news that Robert had been arrested. The once kind and grieving husband was now vilified as a criminal who plotted murder for insurance money. Over a decade later, I heard that he was released from prison. He had been fired from his job and struggled to find new employment due to his criminal record. Apparently, he was now working at a grocery store. I saw on social media that he is often reprimanded at work for having a lot to learn. As his case was reported in national news, he's well known to many. Apparently, people recognize him and take his photos without permission, making him uncomfortable. The photos show him looking significantly aged and unkempt, likely due to financial struggles. It's sad to see such a drastic change in someone who was once celebrated for his looks during his college days. Despite feeling this way, I cannot forgive him. I hope he spends his life reflecting on his actions. After everything that happened, I resigned from the school where I was working and moved out of state. There, I found a job as a piano teacher. Miraculously, my hands were not permanently damaged from the accident, and I was able to play the piano again. Now, I am remarried to a different man, and we are blessed with 2 daughters, living happily as a family of 4. When I married Robert, I chose him based on his looks. However, this experience taught me a painful lesson about not judging people by their appearance. My current husband may not be conventionally handsome, but he's kind, honest, and a wonderful person. I've made a vow to myself to never be swayed by appearances and to discern people's true nature.
Dropping out and living off a pension, isn't that just like a dead weight who doesn't understand the struggles of the young? Caught in a fire and still not a bit spirited. Really, society's dead weight lives the longest, huh?
Tiana, my eldest son's wife, said this laughing, without a hint of malice. It was the last straw for me. Don't think getting disowned is the end of it. Divine retribution will come one day. Just you wait. My name is Violet, I'm 75. When did it start? The words I mutter when I get moving became,
"Here we go."
ouch. Sometimes, I say them even when I'm not in pain. Back when my body issues were fewer than now, and I had just turned 60. A shocking piece of news landed between my recently retired husband, Cody, and me. Our eldest son, Ethan, not particularly bright and with kindness as his only trait, was getting married. Ethan wanted a family meeting, and Cody and I joyfully agreed. Who could have chosen our unremarkable Ethan? On the day of the meeting, Tiana, a well-dressed woman, appeared at our house. Not especially beautiful or flashy. But her behavior was elegant and refined, perhaps due to good upbringing, leaving Cody and me speechless. "You didn't just bring some secretary pretending to be your girlfriend, did you?" I couldn't help but ask Ethan. But as we listened to them, her background became clear. She was the daughter of a chain of Italian restaurants. With 2 older brothers, she wasn't expected to take over the family business. But if something happened to her brothers, Ethan might have to step in. I wondered if Ethan could handle such a responsibility, but the warm atmosphere between him and Tiana made it seem possible. They were more in love than I imagined. We approved their marriage, and they wed. Everything seemed perfect. Then one day, Tiana called. "Oh, Tiana, what's up? Calling so suddenly?"
Violet. I heard from Ethan yesterday. Is it true that Cody dropped out?" "Yes, that's right. He was the youngest, and our parents couldn't afford to send him to school." "Why do you ask?"
Dropping out was common and not unusual. And Ethan's parents' education had nothing to do with his marriage. I optimistically failed to understand the intention behind her question.
"And you're not working now, right?" "Just retired. Enjoying a leisurely pension life."
I replied with a laugh, but the air over the phone turned heavy.
"Tiana, something wrong?" "I'm a bit confused. So, you're saying he never really accomplished anything in society and now just lives off a pension?"
What? Both Cody and I had worked and paid taxes. I didn't know if we contributed to society, but we hadn't been a burden. I didn't understand her point, but I felt looked down upon. Finally, that day, she said,
"Let me think about this,"
and hung up. Wondering if I should tell Ethan about this, I consulted with Cody.
"Tiana's intentions aren't clear, and it might be a misunderstanding. Let's wait and see."
That's what happened. 2 months later. Ethan and Tiana visited us during a long vacation. I hoped that Tiana had misunderstood something about the dropout issue. For their visit, I prepared seasonal ingredients and fancy seafood. But what's this? Tiana, who came to help in the kitchen, looked at the ingredients and got furious. There were no known allergies, and serving shrimp and crab wasn't unusual. I had no idea why she was so angry.
Who decided to have a meal like this?
Well, it was Cody.
He did it because you guys were coming over. He is on a pension, right? Living comfortably off the big taxes we worked hard to pay. Please don't indulge in luxuries like everyone else.
Hey! That's no way to talk. We don't even indulge in luxuries normally, and we've been paying into our pension all this time.
That's the problem with you people. You benefit from everything, from healthcare to pensions, while young people like us work hard, knowing our future pensions will be almost non-existent. If you have money for luxuries, donate it to the younger generation.
While I stood there dumbfounded, she sighed again.
In my family, my parents and brothers all went to college, studied hard, and provide dedicated service to society and our customers every day. And they earn well, of course. Cody, he worked in a factory, right? Didn't study much and settled for low wages, just moving his body around, and his future was secured. How nice. We work hard but never feel it's enough for our efforts.
I couldn't tell if we were indeed better off than Tiana's family unless I compared our incomes. But, regardless, it wasn't fair for her to say all this. Does she even understand how the pension system works? I wondered. If you have so many complaints, then leave. I was about to say that when.
What's all this noise about?
Cody, who should have been at the grocery store with Ethan, appeared from behind. Cody. Tears welled up in my eyes, maybe because of the harsh words thrown at him. He had always worked hard for our family. He even gave up school for us. He's a respectable man who's been working tirelessly for us. He doesn't deserve to be looked down on like this.
Cody, can you please stop living so luxuriously? Huh?
With a haughty attitude and arms crossed, Tiana glared at him. This woman, she's still mocking Cody.
If you're living off a pension, please lead a modest life or save for your demise. We don't want our hard-earned money going to people like you.
Tiana, what's wrong?
I'm not living luxuriously or anything. No. Just preparing all these fine ingredients is a nuisance. We can afford this with our own money.
It's not like they're high-end ingredients. I just thought it'd be nice for today. If you're feeling uncomfortable.
That's not it. It makes me sick that people like you, who never studied properly and just continued a fool's job, live off pensions and eat like this.
I thought to myself, factory work varies, and without people manufacturing, you wouldn't have the car you came in. But I stayed silent. Nothing I said would get through to her. But Cody reacted differently.
I tried to be understanding because you're Ethan's wife, but this is too much.
I paled, realizing he was angry. He rarely gets angry, maybe once in every 8 years, more rarely than the Olympics. If he exploded now, Tiana would be in trouble. That's when it happened. From the back room, I heard an explosion and the sound of something collapsing.
Dad, Mom, Tiana. There's a fire in the back. Get out quick.
Guided by Ethan, who rushed and drenched with water, we managed to escape the house without harm. Exhausted, we all watched our home engulfed in flames.
It's good that everyone's safe.
Ethan muttered. Yes. I replied. It seemed like an electrical fault in the neighbor's house had caused the fire, which spread to ours. Almost everything except the second floor was burned, and the house was unlivable.
What a long vacation this turned out to be. What do we do now?
Cody mused. Yes. Watching us, Tiana said.
We're not going to take care of you.
We, who had not even thought of asking for such a thing, exchanged glances in surprise. What is this kid talking about? when times like this come, isn't it like this? You old folks living on pensions don't have money, so you say, you're the eldest son, so you should take us in, right? I read it on the internet. You wouldn't say something like that, would you, Cody? Of course not. I wouldn't bother Tiana or Ethan with such things. Cody, calmed by the fire and now exhausted, nodded. Ethan watched our exchange with a solemn expression. I was afraid to ask what he thought. Just so you know, don't try to get closer to us just because our house burned down. Tiana, what's gotten into you? We never said we'd do anything like that. Cody continued. That's right. He agreed with my words. It seemed like the anger was flaring up again. People with no brains can't imagine what others might think. After all, how can you, living on pensions, rebuild your lives with no education? Tiana laughed mockingly. I couldn't deny it. I wasn't sure about the cost of house repairs, and how much would the fire insurance cover. I had just heard that if it's a fire spread from somewhere else, suing the responsible party isn't an option. Beyond education, there aren't many places a 60-year-old can work. Violet, you're just a high school graduate, but dropout Cody will just be a burden to you. Tiana said this with a smile, seemingly without any malice. Anger welled up inside me. You're still lively despite being caught in a fire. Society's burdens live the longest. Before Cody could grab Tiana by the collar in response to her words, my slap should have exploded. But my slap didn't hit Tiana, it struck Ethan's left cheek. Ethan! Why are you defending her? You're making a mockery of Dad. Cody restrained me as I cried out, and Ethan stepped forward as if to shield Tiana. I'm sorry, Ethan muttered, looking down. Does marrying mean your wife is more important? Are we, your family, nothing to you? It's not like that. But I love her too, so whether she's wrong or right, I can't choose. My dear Ethan, whose only good trait was his kindness, had become merely indecisive. I had carried and raised Ethan with care. I understood his feelings. I would have liked to support his kind heart if possible. But I just couldn't get along with Tiana anymore. That's enough. Dad and I will cut ties with her. We won't see you either. I couldn't bring myself to say cut ties with Ethan too. My weakness was apparent. I might be called pathetic, but I just couldn't bear to easily sever ties with Ethan. I never imagined spending the last years of my life like this. My body trembled, whether from fear, anxiety, or the excitement of my outburst. And so, my husband and I, and Ethan and his wife, started walking separate paths. 10 years later, after various circumstances, we were living with Cedric, our second son, and his wife. 2 days after the fire, when Cedric was supposed to visit, I contacted him. Why don't you live with us? He said it so casually, and we've been living together ever since. Cedric's wife, Caddy, had been unwell since giving birth and struggled with household chores. Then came our house fire. It goes without saying that Cedric's suggestion to live with us had an ulterior motive. But in exchange for doing household chores, living rent-free was a good deal for us. Even if the household chores meant playing with the grandchildren or cooking, being able to see them grow up every day was a reward for us. We shared household duties with Caddy, and we took over entirely when she felt unwell, so there was no inconvenience at all. Living with us might actually be easier for them than when it was just the two of us. I never really minded or felt dissatisfied, but Cody isn't much of a housekeeper. After cutting ties with Tiana and leaving our burnt house, I felt a daily happiness, as if the words disposal of unnecessary items, huge success, were floating in my head. Then, one day, after finishing dinner and about to serve cookies I made with my grandchildren, the doorbell rang. Hello? Caddy answered in her usual manner. Help! And from the monitor came a voice. Those grave words made us brace for some emergency. Tiana? Caddy looked bewildered, alternating glances between the monitor and us. Eh? Tiana? I couldn't believe it and looked at the monitor, where Ethan and his wife stood. What are you doing here? I couldn't help but ask. Please, we apologize for everything in the past, just help our company. The sight of Ethan and his wife asking for help through the monitor caught even me off guard. Worried the neighbors might think oddly of Cedric's family, I hurriedly opened the door.
What's this all about? Why so sudden?
I ask. Behind me stood Cody, and a little further back, Cedric watched us with concern, protecting his children and caddy. Our family business is about to go bankrupt.
The family business, United Capital Holdings? You've expanded since your marriage, it should be fine, right?
Indeed, her family business had grown rapidly since their marriage, now a respectable corporation. I knew from the newspapers a few years back that Ethan had joined the management, following her grandfather's wish to keep it family-operated. But at this moment, I pretended not to know. Although I was fully aware of their imminent bankruptcy and its reasons. Of course. They had to come to our house, and I could barely suppress a laugh. No. I mustn't laugh. I can't divulge details, but expanding so much has backfired. Can you help us without asking anything?
Let me guess, you hired manager candidates thinking anyone would be fine as long as they were college graduates, and they did whatever they wanted? I know all about it.
Cody was the one who reacted to her words. Like me, he, who knew everything, couldn't completely hide his amusement. So you knew, Mr. Gourmet Iron Man. Tiana said, looking dejected.
Since living here, Cedric often takes me out to eat. Starting a blog turned out to be popular, what a hassle.
Cody laughed. Since moving in with Cedric and his family, Cody, who loved food, was frequently taken out to various restaurants by Cedric. He started reviewing the flavors on a blog, which became popular for its honest depiction of minor local eateries. Now, he even writes articles for magazines, introducing recommended gourmet maps. Gourmet Ironman was his pen name. His articles were so influential that celebrities often visited the restaurants he reviewed. Cody, once mocked as a dropout living on a pension, now earned his income solely through his talent for writing and popularity, regardless of his educational background. I saw you entering a restaurant I know and realized you are the Gourmet Iron Man. Please, Cody, I apologize for the past, but can you feature our restaurant on your blog or in the media? Ethan added, I know it's too convenient, but I'm asking too. I had once cared deeply for Ethan, no doubt about it. But after 10 years without contact, their return now, trying to salvage only the good parts, made me feel nauseous beyond disgust. It's way too convenient. Even if you apologize, your mindset hasn't changed, has it? We're still living on pensions, you know? Can you still apologize despite that? Tiana responded to my words. I can apologize. She responded immediately. Your pride and beliefs are so flimsy. You insulted us over something so trivial that you can apologize so easily? That is. Isn't it because people like that are in management that the store's business is getting worse? Always about money, no passion in what they do. Say whatever you want to me. I'll take it as my punishment. But please, the article about our store. At that moment. Well, that's a bit of a problem. Cody said. What? Exclaimed Tiana. Didn't your family also runs a Japanese restaurant called Sakura besides Italian place, Ruble D? Yes. And the ramen place, Ramen Master, right? Yes, but what does that have to do with anything? I knew about Ruble D since you got married, but I didn't know much about the managing company, so I ended up writing bad reviews for the other places too. Just the day before yesterday. What? She was frozen by Cody's revelation. The magazine asked me to write a critical piece on these places. They said they've been getting bad reviews lately and wanted to feature them. So I wrote exactly what I saw. I even spread rumors about the poor attitude of the managers, which I heard from another writer during my visit. The ramen place served bowls with fingers in them, and the Japanese place lacked cleanliness. Some dishes were served cold, as if they were frozen. Isn't that a bit much? I also heard about this from Cody, saying, I might have written something bad about Tiana's family. That's how I learned about her family situation. It was more of a disclosure of facts than bad-mouthing. What else was there? Cody muttered as Tiana started to tremble. Did you write about everything? It was my way of showing care. I thought it was unfair for customers to suffer losses. I've submitted the article today. Hearing about the submission, Tiana, who was clinging to Cody, and Ethan both collapsed weakly on the spot. You're kidding, right? She murmured. Education doesn't really matter in the end. If we take care of things one at a time, everyone gets equal results, and even small talents can grow with effort. Like Cody. Your family only hires college grads, which isn't bad, but you can't judge someone's character by a resume. You look down on people too much. Did you learn something? At my words, Tiana contorted her face and apologized. I'm sorry. She must have realized how shameful her behavior had been towards someone she had once cut ties with. She apologized and left. Ethan also said, I'm truly sorry for forgetting the kindness of those who raised me and for constantly choosing the wrong path. And with tears, he followed Tiana. I wished they had realized this sooner but didn't say it aloud. That's your path. Keep going. Even though we cut ties, a parent's heart remains. After Cody's article was published, it became a hot topic online, and Tiana's family's store lost customers. Reports said they were using expired meat and mislabeling products. It became apparent they were a conglomerate of scandals and closed all stores within a year. Bankruptcy. From what I hear on internet forums, Ethan and Tiana divorced after that incident. Tiana struggles to find work outside the food industry and lives alone in a cheap apartment. Ethan was seen working part-time at a discount store near their old home. There were arguments heard from their home before the bankruptcy, and their marriage deteriorated as the business did. Both cut off ties, and though I can't confirm the truth, I hope Ethan learns what's truly right for him through these hardships. If we ever meet again, no, I'm still too angry. They should suffer and learn from society. As for me, I've recovered from an illness a few years ago and am now living happier and healthier, all thanks to the dedicated support of Cedric and his wife, and the joy of my grandchildren. And most of all, it's thanks to my precious husband who heals me. Caddy has grown much stronger and is now a powerful mom. Caddy says, it's starting to look like you. That said, I was supposed to be ladylike. It's strange. I do see similarities in the way we scold our grandchildren or when I'm admonishing Cedric. It's strange how non-blood-related family members can resemble each other. I want to continue watching over Cedric and his family. Since recovering, I've started going on walking dates 3 times a week to a nearby park with Cody. It's a small joy, but it feels like returning to my youth, and I'm happy. I'll keep taking care of my health and enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime life.